6 o'clock workshop on policies and procedures, and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I want to say first, announce that thanks to the Lunenburg Fire Department and everybody who participated and helped set up and worked at the Lunenburg Town Fair and Bonfire, a very successful event again. A lot of fun. It was a great night. Good food, good events, and very well attended. So thanks again. That will be the last one at that location as the building, the construction of the new middle school, high school will begin. So hopefully, and I'd like to throw this out to the board, at least in the back of our minds, to start thinking about a location. It is really a very unique Lunenburg event that kind of went into hiding for several years and then got resurrected and has been a big event again. And I'd like to try not to lose it if we can find a location and all work together to find a location to have it in the years going forward. So if we can all think about that, and if anybody out there who's listening, if anybody has any ideas, please let us know. Any public comment from the board this evening?
That was the first time I had seen the bonfire. That was spectacular. And it's so fast, too.
Yeah, this year it didn't burn till like 2 in the morning. Last year it really burned a long time. This one burned really hot and really came down. They really built it really well.
It was very impressive.
Didn't topple over. It really went straight down.
Right.
So. Any public comment from the public? Seeing none. So, there's one more announcement, and that is a word from the Finance Committee that there are 3 openings on the Finance Committee. They've had 2 people who have decided not to pursue reappointment, and 1 person who has had to resign because of time conflict, a personal time conflict with a new job. So that gives 3 openings. So if anybody out there is interested in serving on the Finance Committee, I can say from having served on it myself, it's a very rewarding committee. You get involved with every aspect of the budget of the town and act as an advisory board to town meeting. Please fill out a talent bank form. We'd love to interview you. That's done by the Finance Committee Screening Committee. And so over the next few weeks, we'd like to get that up to full capacity, the FinCom, because this is a good time for new people to learn it, so that when comes the new calendar year, that'll be in the middle of the budget season, that they'll be up to speed, which would be excellent. So if you are out there and you have a finance background, or even if you're just interested in Finance Committee, please let us know by filling out a talent bank form and submitting it to the Board of Selectmen's office. 7:05, we're going to receive an update on the Summer Street project, and we're going to review the contract amendment. And I see we have our representative from our engineering company.
Can I shut this?
Good.
Is that okay?
No.
Hi, I'm Trish Domigan from VHB. How you doing? I haven't been here in a couple months, I guess, 6 months or so. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on Summer Street. There was an MPO meeting last Wednesday. And the MPO voted to approve $7.5 million on the 2017 Transportation Improvement Program for the Summer Street project. It's great news. There was a concern that perhaps the project would get moved to a latter year, and this actually just secures the funding for the project in 2017. There's a little bit of work that has to get done before it goes to construction. I just wanted to give you a few of the stats on the project. We submitted the preliminary design plan, which is called the 25% design plan, in December. We've received most of the comments back from Mass DOT on the submittal, and the next step that we have to do is pretty much review all of the comments, respond to the comments, and then sit with Mass Highway District 4 to go over some of the comments that they had. There are a few items in terms of design that have changed since the start of this project. There are a few policies that Mass DOT have implemented. One is in terms of complete streets, where sidewalks are required on projects that Mass DOT constructs in urban areas, and Summer Street is considered one of them. As you recall, there are 2 sidewalks in Fitchburg, there are 2 sidewalks in Leominster, and we should meet with district to see if they want to put in 2 sidewalks in Lunenburg also. We only had 1 on the residential side, and on the industrial side, we did not include one. There's plenty of right-of-way. You know, the right-of-way out there is pretty significant, so it would not be difficult to install a sidewalk along the industrial side of the street. It's just something that we should get clarification on with District 4. District 3, I'm sorry. The other components that we're considering in terms of the bridge that's out there over Baker Brook, we're taking a look at the crashworthiness of, there's guardrail that's going to be put on the bridge itself. We're just taking a look at the bridge based on the latest inspection reports from Mass DOT to make sure that that is crashworthy, as it were. The actual structure of the bridge itself is in good shape. We just have to bring it into some safety standards to make it so that people won't crash over the side of the bridge itself. The environmental permitting is on hold for right now until we advance the project a little bit more. Once we submit a 25% and we respond to comments, we can actually hold a public hearing for the project. It's a standard requirement that Mass DOT has for these types of projects. Once we have the design public hearing, we can advance the project to 75% design. So that's the next step. Environmental permitting comes after we start advancing the project to 75%. We need some information in terms of the drainage patterns that are out there, the amount of impervious area that we're removing, things like that, before we actually start the permitting. So the action items that we have to do right now is we'll be responding to the comments from District 3, the right-of-way section and the environmental section. Over the next month or so, we'll schedule a meeting with Arthur Frost from District 3 to go over some of the comments that he had on the project, especially in terms of the sidewalk itself, whether or not 2 sidewalks have to be put on Lunenburg. We'll schedule a public hearing once we respond to comments and Mass DOT is satisfied with that. That process to schedule a public hearing takes about 6 weeks. So there's notifications that are associated with the public hearing. There's, advertisements, things like that, that the state wants to implement. It's a 6-week process. So even if it's mid-July, we sit with district, that'll be at the end of August before the public hearing is scheduled. And then we can advance the project to 75%. That would happen in the fall this year.
Mrs. Bertram.
Yeah.
Are Fitchburg and Leominster on the same, they're on board and following the same timeline?
The whole project would follow the same timeline, yes.
Okay.
The comments from District 3, DOT District 3, are for the entire project, not just for the Lunenburg section, so everything would be advancing at the same time. I have to come up with an amendment for the final design 75% project, and I will do so after we get some clarification from District 3, and it'll be submitted to both Leominster and Fitchburg at the same time.
Okay. One of the things that came up on the MPO meeting, and you were there, and I appreciate that you were there,
No problem.
is the fact that right now funds are programmed from the HSIP program for this project.
Yep.
And District 3 is questioning whether or not it's eligible. So they requested a road safety audit.
That's right.
And I had spoken with George Snow, and he is would coordinate that. And he's actually recommended a meeting of the 3 communities to try to coordinate that crash data, because apparently they need the crash data from the police departments.
Right.
So that's something, that we're going to need to move forward with as a community, whether we schedule a group meeting or whether we try to do it individually. But we need to get that crash data to MRPC, to George Snow and Brad Harris, so that they can start that road safety audit process. And what he would prefer is that if we set up a meeting.
Just to give you a little bit of history with a road safety audit, the road safety audit is conducted by a consultant that's hired by DOT. It's not VHB that conducts it. And one of the things that they need, obviously, is the crash data. I think that on other projects in communities similar to the communities that are involved with this one, it's extremely difficult to get crash data from the police department. So DOT is just requesting that the communities work with their police departments to actually get that information to do the safety audit. One of the other things when we meet with District 3, and it's George Snow has to be involved also, but there's a person in Boston, DOT Boston, Bonnie Poland, who's in charge of the safety audits. One of the things that I also spoke with Sarah Bradbury at the MPO meeting, she mentioned that there may not need to be a safety audit, but there's obviously a need to see what the crashes are along the corridor. So maybe this project doesn't need a road safety audit to determine whether or not it's eligible to use HSIP funding. So that's something that should get discussed with the district and with Boston.
Okay, so that's something we do need to follow up on relatively quickly.
Yep.
And the other thing I just want to kind of clarify is, while we were programmed for the 2017 TIP, I just want to set the level of expectation for everybody, is that the first year of the TIP is kind of cast in stone, and projects only fall off if they're not ready. The outer years are not. So that doesn't mean we're off the hook, that, we're definitely funded in 2017. We still have to keep the momentum behind this project. We still have to keep selling it. We have to make sure we keep moving forward the progress, because it doesn't mean that because we're in 2017, we're automatically funded in 2017.
Right.
So it's really not a sure thing until 2017 almost.
That's exactly right, Phyllis.
What happens with projects is they get programmed in a 4-year period of the TIP, but then due to either right-of-way constraints or environmental permitting, things like that, there's delays in them. So nothing really is set in stone, except for the current TIP year. So.
But if we stay current and keep working, it's possible we might even move up if somebody else falls off.
It could. The only problem with that is because of the magnitude of this project and the cost associated with it, it uses all of the target funds.
Right.
So all of the projects would have to fall off, which I don't see that happening.
Right. There's one other mechanism that DOT could impose on, or the MPO could impose on this, called Advanced Construction AC. So a portion of the project could get constructed in 2 different TIP years or 3 different TIP years, depending on the duration of construction. So if it was ready in 2016, they could advance a portion of the funding for 2016 to have the project go to construction. But it would have to line up with the amount of funding available within that TIP year. So there's a lot of things that have to line up perfectly for that to happen.
It's funny, because I've actually asked about AC and with this project, and have been told by Clinton Bench and the rest of the MPO that the only project that can be approved for AC is if it exceeds the total target funds for the region.
Yeah.
And because this project is just under the total target funds, that it couldn't be programmed over a multitude of years, which is why we've used all the program in 2017. So, as you know, if it does get pushed out, then we will exceed the target funds. So,
Right.
we really just, that's why I'm happy to see that we're moving forward and that we're going forward with, we'll be going forward with the public hearing in the near future.
So we just have to make sure we're doing everything we need to do in a timely manner.
Exactly.
So in order to keep the momentum for the project going, we need to make sure that we can fund the design of the project. And that was part of the reason to have Trish here this evening is, as you know,
the design money for the project has been included in the state transportation bond bill, which is not available to us at this point in time, and we're not sure when or if that becomes available. So the last time, a couple of months ago, when Jack was here, we talked about a bunch of different road projects. We also talked about how we might program our Chapter 90 funding to keep this project going to advance our Chase Road project. And that's something that I want to make sure that the board is aware of, that we are, although we don't have the contract amendment in front of us this evening, at some point, the board is going to have to make a commitment to use that Chapter 90 money if it needs to be used to keep the momentum on this project. So I just want to put that back on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to speak for other people on the board, but certainly throughout this project, I've been a huge supporter. There is no other way the town will get this project done without state money. So we have to do, if we have to come up with, the remaining, what is it, $325,000 or thereabouts? Mm-hmm. So we need to do that. And if part of that is coming from, since it's a road project, we did add some, at the last minute in the budget, we added some extra money to there. And I know that the DPW director actually noted that we could possibly use that for that design money. I'd be in support of that. And of course, we don't want to stop pressure on our state legislation to, try to get somebody to get the governor's ear to get the transportation bond bill signed, which would really take care of a lot of those problems.
I know all of our representatives have requested that these funds be released, and they've all sent letters, as have I, and I know that the board has. I believe the board did. Did we send a letter? I know that. Some time ago. Yeah, some time ago.
About recently.
So I know that we are all lobbying, but it's imperative that we make sure we have the design money available to keep this project moving forward, because although 2017 sounds like a long way out, it really isn't.
Yeah.
It really isn't. And in order to meet all of the milestones that we need to meet and to have those public hearings and to be ready for construction in 2017, we're going to have to appropriate the engineering funds. To lose over $7 million of federal funds because we simply are not willing to part with the Chapter 90 money. While I understand that there are roadways all over town that need paving, this roadway is in failure, and there's a number of reasons. There's economic opportunity, with the density of the dwellings that are down there now. It needs to be addressed, and so I think as a community we're going to have to put forward the money.
Any other updates?
Nope.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, great.
Thank you for bringing the update. Thanks
Thank
for
you very
the
much.
good news that it stayed on the tip to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next up is the final report and presentation from the Committee on Diversity and Acceptance.
Just give us a minute since she closed the computer.
I will take this moment to note that current business number 5, the Accept and Adopt Energy Conservation Policy, we reviewed that during our workshop on policy. There are some things we want to be in contact with the Green Energy Committee with, some potential changes, but overall, we thought it looked good. We'll submit that back to them, and once we have an agreement, that policy will be dispersed to the facilities directors, both on the town and school side, at which point that they can start the next phase, which would be developing an energy policy for each of the buildings. So number 5 on the agenda is completed. Mr. Ebersol.
Good evening. I served as the Selectmen's representative to the Lunenburg School Committee's Advisory Committee on Acceptance and Diversity. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues on that advisory committee to speak with you this evening. And I'm repeating the presentation that Elizabeth Rawlinson did for the school committee itself, but I thought that it was important enough to bring this to the board and to the town. This special committee was formed in response to the unfortunate events that occurred in our school and town during the fall. These events, while devastating, provided the catalyst for our community to come together to address the issues of discrimination, bullying, and the much broader scope of tolerance and acceptance of differences within ourselves, our schools, and our community as a whole. This challenging time thrust our small community into the national media spotlight, drawing both negative and positive attention to the challenges all people everywhere face in terms of diversity and acceptance. Several groups such as the Anti-Defamation League, the Department of Justice, as well as Fitchburg State University reached out to our school district to offer support and to partner with us in this endeavor. The Anti-Defamation League and the Department of Justice provided feedback on current programs and practices. 29 students and 6 educators from Lunenburg Public Schools attended the Voices of Leadership Conference in Boston on April 3rd of this year. A variety of student leadership programs are available from both these organizations and are currently under review by the Lunenburg High School administration for use in the fall. Our town chose to use this opportunity to stand strong, to spark an important discussion of how we can proactively work towards ensuring that the students, teachers, and administration continue to receive the support, training, and education necessary to continue to promote a culture of acceptance and diversity, and to continue to foster a community that understands, values, protects, and celebrates the needs of all individuals, regardless of race, color, creed, mental abilities, physical abilities, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic level. It must be noted that there are already many efforts ongoing in school with students, faculty, and administration. The effort of this committee is to provide additional information, and we may overlap with some of those efforts, but not duplicate them. It is important to note the impressive curriculum and actions already in place in the school district and available publicly to review on the district's website. The generosity of the administration, in particular Superintendent Combs, the teachers, and the students in sharing their ongoing work with this committee bears special note, and it was a sincere pleasure to have the opportunity to work with everyone involved. That being said, during the November 2nd and December 4th, 2013 school committee meetings, a committee for acceptance and diversity was formed with the following charge. The Advisory Committee for Acceptance and Diversity will be charged with assessing the cultural climate and tolerance and diversity status in district and recommend changes and improvements to our program. How can we improve tolerance, respect, and diversity in our district? Make recommendations on personnel changes, programs, and recommendations for policy changes that are necessary to ensure we have created an environment that is supportive of diversity. Provide a ballpark figure in March for any changes they may recommend. The advisory committee shall be complete by the end of the school year, and it'll be composed of 2 school committee members, 1 member from the Board of Selectmen, 1 student, 1 alternate student, 1 community member at large, 1 community member at large, alternate, and 2 parents. Applicants within the committee were invited to appear before the school committee to interview for the above-named positions. The school committee deliberated on many candidates and voted to select the members listed. Gregory Berthium for the school committee, Michael Mackin for the school committee, me for the Board of Selectmen, was actually determined by this board, Charlene Stevens, community member at large, who served as chair, Richard Beardmore, community at large alternate, Nicole Hennessy, student representative, Casey Voyer, student alternate, Elizabeth Rawlinson, parent, who served as vice chair, Darlene Vaughn, parent, and Paul Bertrand as parent alternate. We met starting on January 9th and met for 11 times and completed our work on June 12th. So for the process we employed during the meetings included discussions and brainstorming sessions to generate a list of suggestions and opportunities to design, encourage, promote acceptance and diversity throughout the district. We broke down the list generated by these sessions into categories such as town-wide community outreach efforts, student outreach, activities, curriculum, and policy, ultimately focusing on those points solely as to policy per the committee charge. We engaged in collaborative discussions with Fitchburg State University, the Department of Justice, as well as Lunenburg High School students and administration. As mentioned earlier, the Anti-Defamation League and Department of Justice reached out to our district. The initial outreach was a critical component to informing the direction and the charge of our efforts. Additionally, Fitchburg State University, among the first to reach out, offered their support and services to assist us in assessing the culture and climate of our community and to partner with us in this endeavor at no cost to the town. Fitchburg State was going to represent the departments in that school, communication media, political science, cultural studies, faculty, graduate students and researchers, working with graduate students and focus groups comprised a cross-section of community with the goal of developing a scorecard to be used for the district for ongoing internal review of progress in this area. It should be noted that while that information from Fitchburg State is not available at this time, it's expected to be done by the fall. Also partnering with us were the students of the District of Lunenburg, School District of Lunenburg. They responded to and embraced the challenges before our community by collaborating with the administration of the high school to assess the strengths, challenges, and opportunities to engage the student body and the community in working together to promote and sustain a culture of acceptance. Those goals included, but were not limited to, increasing opportunities for students to get involved with activities, to improve homeroom activities and interactions, to strengthen student-teacher relationships, and to find new ways to welcome new students. Student achievement. A group of students already started a monthly newsletter which includes updates on particular clubs and what is happening around the school. Another group of students is currently putting together a welcoming committee to expand on the already in place welcoming programs by the administration in an effort to try to come up with additional ways to help new students and incoming 8th graders feel more comfortable. One of the projects of the students is put together a teen talk group to help fellow students throughout the year. There are indeed many policies and programs already in place within the school district and available for an in-depth review on the district's website. I will briefly touch on what's currently in place in the system. Civil rights policy that states and recognizes the diversified characteristics and needs of our students with the keen desire to be responsive to them. The school committee will make every effort to protect the dignity of the students as individuals. It will also offer careful consideration and sympathetic understanding of the personal feelings, particularly with reference to their race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical and intellectual differences. The GEMS program is taking its name from belief that every individual is an important and precious gem, is designed to ensure all students grow to their potential, develop empathy towards others, and value the importance of self-discipline and becoming contributing members of the communities. There are mentoring programs for the student leadership opportunities and a variety of extracurricular activities such as the 2014 Youth Congress that students and teachers participated in on April 3rd. The proposed budget that I presented to the school committee at their May 7th school committee meeting was to provide a ballpark figure for any charges the committee recommended. Based on the first year needs, we had recommended to adopt the budget that's shown with programming and speakers, materials, grant writers, activities, training, and curriculum. The total budget would be $30,000 to $38,000, and we fully recognize that these costs would be ideally covered by grants and contributions, especially the services of a grant writer. We understand the financial constraints of the school budgets. However, it was felt that it was important to detail the costs regardless of the source of funds. Fitchburg State is providing free services and support in documenting the current state of affairs and developing a dashboard so future activities can be measured for their effectiveness. They have indicated a desire to continue this partnership on a long-term basis. After careful review of the systems already in place within the district and the discussions and findings, our recommendation to the school committee are as follows. The school committee shall establish a diversity committee with responsibilities to be outlined in policy. This would include an annual review of the district's civil rights status and dissemination of any donated funds. This committee will meet at least quarterly. The district shall define diversity and the universal language of acceptance for Lunenburg School District. The Diversity Committee shall create an evaluation tool to be used annually, as I mentioned before, a scorecard, to review data and measure how the district is doing in regards to diversity and acceptance. The Diversity Committee will research collaboratively with Fitchburg State University to seek grant funding opportunities specific to diversity and acceptance. The Diversity Committee shall participate in obtaining grants and donations to support the diversity program. The administration shall integrate the above universal language of acceptance as defined by the Diversity Committee across all disciplines. The administration shall integrate into existing curriculum and instruction these practices and establish small group settings throughout the academic year for the specific purpose of addressing and teaching diversity and acceptance. This should not imply that the Diversity Committee is advocating smaller class sizes at all levels, while that may be a great goal. The administration shall provide additional professional development specific to diversity and acceptance. In conclusion, the Advisory Committee wishes to acknowledge the impressive body of work already established and in practice by the administration and educators within the school district of Lunenburg. We wish to thank them for their generous help in sharing their efforts and information with us, being charged with the important task of evaluating the culture and climate in regards to diversity and acceptance within the school committee, and to make recommendations designed to enhance, support, and supplement the policies in place. It is our hope that this advisory committee recommendations will be able to assist those efforts. We are confident that moving forward, the District of Lunenburg will continue to grow in its efforts and strengthen its already extensive program. It is my belief that this process can help the entire town, not just the schools. At this point, I'd ask if there are any questions.
I have a question, Bob. Have they done anything about creating the diversity committee? Do they know what it'll be made up of?
We were an advisory committee to the school committee, and they have already talked about forming the diversity committee similar to other committees that they have that are in place, such as the wellness committee that includes students, parents, faculty, administration, community members, and then a diversity within that mix as well. So there's a process by which they've done it, but they've not done it yet.
Okay. When do they expect the committee to be up and running, do you think?
I would say realistically sometime in the fall. We were trying to make sure that we did not overlap with a lot of the programs that were ongoing for many years and then heightened over the last year. So they think they can move fairly quickly with that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Through you to the rest of the committee, I want to thank you all for your work. I mean, it was born out of tumultuous times, but I agree wholeheartedly with especially your last statement, that I don't think this is just a school issue. I think that what policies and what observations and comments and direction you can be providing to the school would also be instructive to the town as a whole, and can only help strengthen the town. So for that, thank you. And I look forward to, as Ms. Luck just said, it being implemented at the school and diversity committee and seeing what programs and what speakers they have. Because it's not a one shot and you're done. I mean, it really is an ongoing atmosphere and an ongoing environment that you have to always attend to. So thank you to you and the whole entire committee.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
FY 2015 annual appointments and/or reappointments. Okay, so this is the time of year that we have this. First of all, two sets of appointments. There's Board of Selectmen appointments that are directly selected by us, and then there are the town manager appointments, which, if we do nothing, go into effect, but generally we try to have a vote to ratify those appointments by the town manager. Now, there was some discussion at a previous workshop that we would be implementing, not only like we have a talent bank form now for new applicants. It was brought and discussed at the board that we would have a filing by people who want to be reappointed that would have a summary of not only their name and their position, but also what their contributions had been, and basically a couple of sentences on how they feel that their committee, board, or commission was working, and why they would want to be reappointed, and what directions or what things they thought should be addressed in their committee. We all agreed on using that reappointment form, and then we had questions about could we possibly use it for this go-round, because it was coming in so late, and there are some boards and committees that we need to get people on, because otherwise they don't have, either they're already out of compliance with getting a quorum, like PAC, which we've talked about for many weeks, but then there are some other ones that have quorum issues. We should open up the discussion about how to address that, and should it be addressed here this year, or should it be something that we talk about and introduce to people? Because right now, as of today, everybody whose term was up in June 30th, 2014 is now, their term isn't expired. We can let them go on in their position. We talked about possibly appointing them for a specific period of time, at which time we would distribute the reappointment form.
I thought that we had decided that we did want to reuse the reappointment form, and we're going to circulate it. And my understanding from the email from the town manager today is that those incumbents remain in full force and effect until such time as they're notified that that appointment is not, they're not being reappointed. Personally, I don't see any harm in circulating the reappointment form with individuals with boards that have a vacancy. That's a new appointment. It's not a reappointment of someone already existing. So what I'd like to do is I think the appointment form made sense. I think it opens communication between this entity as the appointing authority and those individuals that are serving. And I think we need that information to make appointments.
Mr. Chairman, I would echo Mrs. Bertram's comments. And one of the discussions we had was that there's a lot of administrative work involved for the town manager to manage this, and that this new form would be impossible to implement as of June 1st. And we talked about a 30-day holdover period. I'm fine with even a longer period of holdover to give enough time for the town manager and her staff to handle this new process, as well as to have the actual people fill out the forms and send them back. I think that one thing we talked about trying to do is to make sure that we have regular communication with the new members. It's not an attempt to keep people off, but it's an attempt to have them brag, so to speak, for the good things they've done, or to identify issues on the committee that need to be improved, and that's a way to communicate with us. So I would recommend that we hold over the appointments that we make in such a way to allow for this form to go out.
Anybody else have any comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree with what we're discussing now. I believe some of the confusion might have come in a piece of the discussion where we talked about a form like the one we've talked about for reappointment would work best if a committee member had set goals and had a year to work on those goals, and then could comment on how they performed against those goals, either individually or their committee. So that with an understanding that, this is the first time around, it will provide some data, it will open a good discussion, but it probably won't complete all of what we had hoped it would. I could support a delay for the administrative reasons, but to use it this year.
No, I agree.
Okay, I would say that my only concern, well, there were two concerns that I had noted, and number one was, did we have the authority, and we got that in writing today from the town manager through town council, that by anybody who's already in the position would be extended without a vote until they were replaced, as long as they did not resign on their own. So that was answered. My second issue was that it was discussed in our workshop that the reappointment form would be used, and if somebody did not submit one, at least the inference was, or the implication was, that they wouldn't be reappointed. If we forego that until next year, but we use it this year to get feedback and get communication going, then I can support that. As long as we say, as long as we acknowledge that it's summer and people may not get these back, or it may take a while for them to get back, but we really want to establish the practice that come a year from today, anybody who wants to be reappointed needs to have filled one out for the FY16 year, then I can support that.
Well, I guess my comment to that would be, the majority of boards meet during the summer. And I think that if we give people enough notice, and I think, as Mr. Ebersol said, we can extend that. It's a very simple form. It's 4 questions. And if there's, if someone's out of town for 3 months, then obviously there's a reason that they couldn't submit the form. But I guess, if we ask them to just give us input on what the committee's doing, or what ways we can strengthen committees, or what they feel have been noteworthy items, I don't think that's too much to ask. So I guess
I agreed. All I've said was that if we remove the stipulation that if they don't fill out one for a host of reasons, I guess.
Well, I guess that would be, to me, that would be an option, an opportunity to discuss when the reappointments came up. I think that we have talent bank forms from individuals who've submitted that want to participate. And that because there's an incumbent in that position, that talent bank just sits until there's a vacancy. And if we have a sitting member that doesn't submit the form, I guess I would have to weigh why we've got individuals who have submitted forms and individuals that are incumbents that haven't. I don't know that I'm going to agree to that, because I think I'll have to take that on a case-by-case basis. But to me, if the Board of Selectmen sends you a form and says, please fill this out in order to be reappointed, and you choose not to fill that out, if there's extenuating circumstances, would I consider that? Yes. But I don't know that I would reappoint that individual. I think that's again, it's a case-by-case basis. I'm not willing to make a blanket policy that if you don't submit the form, you can't be reappointed, but I'm also not willing to say if you don't submit the form, then you're still going to be reappointed.
And the way the form states is that if you would like to continue to serve the town, please fill out the information before, ask for typical data, where you live and email address so we can contact you. Describe how you contributed to your committee position during the tenure of your appointment. What recommendations do you have to improve operations of your committee or position? What resources are not currently available that would help you accomplish the goals and mission of your committee or position? I personally think should be a shall and not a may. I don't think this is onerous for any of the existing people. The fact is, just about anyone who's been on a committee for any period of time would actually have a hard time limiting themselves to this one page, and we're just trying to get the high points. And so I would say that this should be a requirement, subject to extenuating circumstances on an individual basis.
Including this year.
Including this year.
Yeah. Again, giving somebody, I think it should be simple for people to find out too, but some people, just like some people don't like to come before the board in a public meeting if they're not expecting this, and they may not know what to write or what they want to write. I think I don't want to put more roadblocks to getting people. We have lots of vacancies. It's not like we have a host of volunteers coming forward that we can't find room for all of them. I don't want to put another obstacle in, and certainly want at the last minute. Because I do want to define when we're going to appoint people. If we're willing to extend them right now and not make an official appointment, I think that's fine. But we need to make a determination when that cutoff is.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe a reasonable alternative for the first year is to say it's a data point that we can consider.
Exactly.
One of the other data points are, do we have more applicants than we have seats? Is there extenuating circumstances, et cetera? But I do feel, I feel that I could agree wholeheartedly that beginning next year, it's a shall and a requirement.
Mr. Chairman, I guess the other thing is that we did adopt a policy that talked about appointment was not, I'm trying to find it right at the moment where our policy is that we actually,
Page 19.
thank you.
Not that I looked at it.
That's why there's so much administrative work, so. Reappointment shall not be considered automatic, but shall be based on an evaluation of the appointee's past contribution to the board, committee, or position. As part of the annual appointment process, the town manager will ask incumbents whose term expire on June 30th to fill out a modified talent bank regarding their desire for reappointment and description of their past contributions. The town manager will ensure the selectman will receive it by a certain date, which, because we didn't get this done, she couldn't meet that standard. So we adopted this policy back in November. We didn't publicize it very well. I personally think we should follow a policy that we adopted for the purposes of getting information about the people who serve on our committees who do the bulk of work beyond the work of town employees.
I would agree with that, but I would echo Mr. Tolles, and I think that's what I was saying, is I think to me right now, I'm not willing to say you are unequivocally not going to be reappointed if you don't fill out this form, but I'm also not willing to say you will if you don't fill out the form. I want to use it as a data point when we are making our appointments. How many of the committee members submitted them? If they didn't, why didn't they? And make every effort to get that information, and I'm willing to consider that. However, moving forward next year, it has to be filled out. But I'm also comfortable with making it a long enough deadline, that we give people 30 days to fill out this form. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And to me, it will weigh, when I'm making a reappointment, it will weigh heavily if they chose not to fill out the form. It will weigh on whether or not I'm willing to reappoint them, and especially if there are other individuals who are willing to do the job.
You would think that the chairs of those committees could help explain it.
I'm not defending not using it. I'm just saying I just made one observation of my own that I think if somebody wants to say they don't, I'm willing to consider that as a point that if somebody doesn't fill it out, I want to know why they didn't fill it out. I guess you don't need anybody's permission to do it, because even if you didn't obviously state it, you could use that as a criteria and just not use it as a criteria.
Right,
so,
right,
right. I thought I proposed that as a possibility in just saying that, acknowledging that while we adopted the policy that Mr. Ebersol read in November, we didn't have the form until a couple of weeks ago. And again, when you implement something right at the deadline, I certainly would want to give them more than 30 days to fill it out, because I don't know where people are. I know some people go away for a couple months or whatever, and I just want to set two things. I want to decide this matter and then set the date when we're going to do the final reappointment for the rest of the year.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the implementation of this reappointment form for all persons who want to seek reappointment for their term ending June 30th, and provide until August 15th for them to return the form to the Board of Selectmen's office through the town manager.
I would second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None.
So you have a number of vacancies in addition to people who may or may not be interested in reappointment. So we had talked about, because you have a number of people who have applied for positions, potentially trying to schedule them to come in yet this month. So would you be interested in working on filling the vacancies in July and then consider the reappointments in August?
I would.
Yes.
Yes.
The sooner the better, I would think.
we need to fill the vacancies, that's for sure. Especially if we have people with active talent bank forms.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize Mr. Toll's effort setting up the booth at the bonfire, whereby which we solicited people to fill out talent banks, and the number that were filled out was
4 actual forms, about 7 interested people who are still thinking about it.
Oh, good.
There were some people who came up to us and said, I knew you were going to be here, I wanted to come over. She filled out a form, and then she came back later with her husband.
Right.
And other people were talking about, well, what's available? So it gave an opportunity to engage that discussion. It was a fun evening as well.
And just on that point, we did have a banner made up to encourage people to volunteer to help around town on boards, committees, and other things. And I would suggest we use that banner at any town get-togethers, and certainly if I'm available, I'd be willing to kind of man that, and would encourage, especially chair people of boards with vacancies, to be part of that as well. Several of the selectmen and a couple of other board members came by during the bonfire and helped out, and it was very great.
And I want to, because you mentioned the banner, I want to thank D&G Graphics for donating and printing up the sign.
Right.
And it was a sign that we could use a lot of places because it just said volunteer for your town. It didn't state a date. It didn't state an event that it was held in. So it really can be reused many times. And I really appreciate that D&G came through for that. So thank you to them.
One of the things to think about perhaps is also using it at the bonfires, if
The
people
band
are
concerts?
available.
The band
I mean,
concerts?
sorry, the band. Yeah, we did it at the
We're
bonfire.
gonna have a bonfire
The
every
band
week.
the band concerts, I apologize, but that there's a band concert Monday night, and it might be a good opportunity. I know they're very well attended.
Right.
Oh, and I should, of course, thank you for reminding me. See, I did not get the email, but I believe this Monday
Yes.
starts the band concerts, 5-week series, sorry. So every Monday, starting on the, what is that, the 7th?
7th?
7th, 14th, 21st, 28th, 35th, which is the 4th. And there'll be one rain date at the end, so if any of them gets rained out, they'll go 1 week longer.
Just a little plug, the Lions Club will be running the snack table and et cetera at the band concert, and all of those funds raised go back into our community, so
Excellent.
just to keep that in mind.
Yep. And it's a wonderfully fun night. As long as it's not lightning and raining, really great. And last year we had great weather, so I appreciate all the musicians and of course Steve Archambault for conducting.
More on appointments.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that I did want to mention, because I was asked by the Council on Aging to mention, I did meet with both the Director of the Council on Aging and a participant at the Council on Aging who was, I guess, chosen to come talk to me about appointments for the Council on Aging. They have 5 vacancies. They have 2 existing vacancies, and they have 3 people whose terms expired or were set to expire June 30, 2014. The Council on Aging in June did take up reviewing the talent bank forms on file and did make a recommendation on 5 people to appoint to that committee. I did tell them that the board was considering holding over appointments because you wanted to take some time to review your process and interview people, and that they shouldn't expect the appointments to be made at the beginning of July. They did ask me to relay to you that they were concerned about that because 2 of the 5 include the chair and the vice chair of the committee. They feel like they have a lot of work that they wanted to get done beginning as soon as possible. And so they had asked for some consideration on making their appointments sooner rather than later. Their first meeting is next week. The other wrinkle here is the Council on Aging has its own internal policies, one of which relates to term limits. And at least 2, if not 3, of the people whose terms were up June 30, that term limit policy would apply to them. Now, the term limit policy is not part of the town bylaws, so it's not something that you are bound by. But I can't tell you without talking to them, because I know that applied to them, and that may have had some bearing on whether or not they were included on the list of 5 that came over from the Council on Aging as a whole. So they have two existing vacancies, 3 people that their terms are up and were subject to the term limit policy, which is an internal policy of the Council on Aging. So I want to put that out there for you. Obviously, because they can be held over, they won't have an issue with quorums, and I can communicate that to them. And I know this is after the fact, but I did agree to let you know that that was their situation.
Well, I think that, first of all, I see that we have 10 talent bank forms for Council on Aging, 5 of whom we have already interviewed. No, 4 we've already interviewed, sorry. So I think, given their urgency, we should probably put them for next week. Is that too late for them?
Mr. Chairman, because we have 10 applicants for what I think I heard was 5 positions,
Right.
I wonder if the better solution might not be to allow them to hold over, like we just agreed we'd do with other boards. They'll meet their quorum.
Right, that's what I
Then-
think the town.
Okay, but then interview the other 5.
Right, that's what I'm just suggesting.
Sorry,
No,
missed you.
that's fine. Yeah, I'm suggesting.
I thought you were
exactly-
talking about the 5 we've already met. I'd like
No,
to meet the other
we've,
5, right?
what I'm saying is that I don't want to make any appointments until I interview everybody.
Okay, fine.
Or the board, not me. We interview everybody. And if they need to, if we've interviewed 4 already, we should interview the other 6 next week
Sorry, I
and
misunderstood.
try to get the appointments. Now, as we've said here, given the information that town manager said, if they have internal policies, that's certainly fine, but those policies are their own, not ours. If they want to make that part of the policy about not reappointing somebody and having a year hiatus between that, that's fine, but it's not really binding, and we just want to be able to appoint who we feel the best people are. And especially since we're going to have 10 people interviewed for 5 vacancies.
On the subject of interviewing people for vacancies, I'm looking at some of this, and I'm seeing that there are individuals who submitted talent bank forms, and we may have incumbents that wish to serve, continue to wish to serve, but does it make sense to interview those individuals who've submitted talent bank forms, that there may or may not be an opening on that particular board, depending on whether or not an individual wants to be reappointed. But I think if they're new and they've submitted a form, we should have them come in for an interview.
Oh, I think everybody should be interviewed.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm
So
just
if we
saying that
start
we can't,
scheduling-
I don't know how many we have here.
But perhaps we could start scheduling those
Right.
as well.
Like next week.
Yeah, okay.
And the
The
other,
other thing, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say is that they may have put their name down for one committee and we'll end up convincing them to go on another committee, or they may say something that says, oh, here's what we are.
Right.
We have 17, 18, 19 applications, which is fabulous. So I just don't think we want to have 19 interviews in one, maybe we can have them in 2 meetings.
Right, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting all in one
Right.
meeting, no.
Okay.
But to Mr. Ebersol's point, I agree, we have several people who checked several boxes.
Right.
And I think we should help, through the interview process, help them understand the differences and see where their real preferences are. Also, perhaps we could see where we thought their strengths might be.
The 3 most immediate ones, as far as I see it, as far as priority, would be Council on Aging, Personnel Committee, and the PAC, Public Access Cable. Those, Personnel Committee and PAC are non-functioning right now. And Council on Aging, again, as we just described, because they have 5 vacancies, is going to have a quorum problem. So if we can get those interviews done first, that would be perfect.
Okay. So then the last part of this is my list of reappointments. These are appointments that are made by the town manager under Section 4-2D of the town charter. And this is the section that requires or requests board ratification of the appointments. I will read through the list of appointments. For Animal Control Officer, and these are all one-year appointments. Kathleen M. Como, Emergency Management Director, Chief Patrick Sullivan, Races Control Operator. This is for our radio, operation of radios during emergencies, Ralph Swick and Janine Swick. Fence Viewer, Robert H. Bowen. Field Driver, Kathleen M. Como. Forest Warden, Chief Patrick Sullivan. Hazardous Waste Coordinator, Carrie Spidell. Hearings Officer, Carrie Spidell. Inspector of Animals, Kathleen M. Como. Inspector of Wires, James Sharkey. Assistant Inspector of Wires, John Beery. Inspector of Weights and Measures, Stephen Cullinane. Inspector of Plumbing and Gas Fittings, Gary R. Williams. Assistant Inspector of Plumbing and Gas Fittings, Richard Capanis. Public Weighers, Faye Silva, Eric Ward, Brian Contoy, Richard Reynolds, Eric Morin, Jay Valier, Gary Savoy, Robert Pierce. The Senior Citizen Property Tax Work-Off Program and Taxation Aid Committee, Catherine Herrick, David Manzello, Doreen Noble, Shelley McKay, and there's one vacancy on that committee, and that would be for a citizen at large. Technical Advisory Committee, Jack Rodriquins, with one vacancy, and that vacancy is the Planning Director. Tree Warden, Jack Rodriquins. Veterans Service Officer, T.J. Blauser. Local Census Liaison, Catherine Herrick. The Smart Growth Reporting Officer, that was an error, that is a vacancy, and that, again, is the Planning Director. There are two additional vacancies, the Assistant Building Inspector and the Alternate Building Inspector, that we're still looking for people to fill. And then our police officers who serve as your licensing agents, Chief James Marino, Lieutenant Michael Luth, Sergeant Thomas Gamble, Sergeant Sean Connery, Sergeant Jack Hebert, Detective Jeffrey Thibodeau, Officer Jonathan Brock, Officer Robert DeConza, Officer Peter Licoditis, Officer Joshua Matthew, Officer Bradley McNamara, Officer Joshua Tossi, Officer Sean Zrate, and your reserve officers, Robert Ailes, Stanley Barney, Benjamin Campbell, Linda Carrier, Michael Connors, Robert DaCosta, Walter Godfrey, Paul Grundant, Samantha Hudson, Donald Latart, Lisa Melnicki, Devin O'Brien, and Quinn Smith. And then we also appoint officers in neighboring towns to serve in the capacity of police officer within the town of Lunenburg when needed. From the town of Shirley, Sergeant Peter Violette, Sergeant Alfreda Cromwell, Sergeant Samuel Santiago, Patrol Officer Kevin Laprade, Patrol Officer Everett Moody Jr., Patrol Officer Gregory Gushlaw, Patrol Officer Brandon Bruin, Patrol Officer Jason, I can't ever pronounce his name, Sternice, and their reserve officers Robert Passetti, McKendrick Jackson, Leslie Hampson, Heather Swick, and from the town of Townsend, Irving M. Marshall, David A. Prophet, Cheryl M. Stevenson, Mark Giancotti, John Johnson, James Marchand, Thaddeus Rochette, Randy Gerard, Kimberly Matson, George Reedy, Mark Francis, David Phillips, James Landy, Brent Davis, and their reserve officers, Tony Brennan, Chris Van Voorhees, Austin Cody, Joseph Quinn, Michael Marchand, and Daniel Schultz.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion on the ratification of the town manager's appointments just read.
Mr. Moderator, I would make a motion.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
not moderator.
Did I say that? Back to town meeting. I would make a motion that we ratify the appointments except for the animal control officer.
Do I have a second?
I guess I would like to understand his motion.
Okay. Would you like to explain your
Sure.
motion?
We have had two circumstances over the past year since I've been elected, and that we as a board dealt with the animal control officer that I felt was an issue, as well as a separate issue that I talked with the town manager about. Many residents in town have talked to me about being unsatisfied with the services of the animal control officer. And I've known Kathy for longer than she's been in office, and but I think that this position is an important position, and that at this point I am not ready to ratify her services based on what I would expect from an animal control officer to do.
Okay. I would just preface that if it's removed from the ratification, that without any other action, that it would go into effect in 14 days. So in order to get what I think you're looking for, and this is just a procedural comment, you would actually have to act to, I think we have veto power. So just so you're aware.
So I guess I would.
Well, I mean, you would do it in two
Since-
motions. You'd
right.
have to do it in, because we're doing ratifications
Right.
first. So I just wanted to point that out to you, that's
Okay.
all. Do I have a second on the motion?
I could second that motion.
I understand, I've heard that Mr. Ebersol has had numerous complaints, and I know that there's concerns about past dealings with the animal control officer, and I think you're speaking specifically about a couple of instances. Personally, I would like to give the animal control officer an opportunity to come in. I think if there are issues and concerns, we as the appointing authority have an obligation to have that communication before it gets to the point of not ratifying an appointment. So I would like to open that dialogue. I know that we are looking at regional animal control, and I guess I'm looking for feedback from the town manager on her thought process on the animal control officer and the inspector of animals, as you have recommended
I
reappointment.
think he just removed one, just animal control officer.
Oh, okay.
Is that correct?
Because I think Inspector of Animals may be Board of Health, or there's one additional position that she has. Actually, what I would love to do is have the town manager implement our reappointment form for many of these positions, and I would echo Mrs. Bertram's comments about having the opportunity to talk with Kathy and about what the concerns we have. And that the failure to ratify would be the opportunity to have that additional discussion.
Mr. Chairman, my second was predicated to move the process to reappoint everybody else and to make this a separate discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Before we vote, I have a question. What is a technical advisory committee?
I'm not sure what this group is doing that is different than the tech review committee that we have for all development plans. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure what they're doing.
So
This appointment process, I think, evolves every year, and Bob and I had some discussion earlier. When I started here almost 8 years ago, you essentially reappointed everybody every year.
Matter of vote,
We've
yeah.
taken full-time employees off because you don't need to reappoint full-time employees. You do with the police officers as your licensing agents. You're not reappointing them as police officers, but you're reappointing them as your licensing agents. I think we try to make progress on this each year. There are still some things that I'm not aware, we're not doing anything with these. I don't know that the Technical Advisory Committee is doing anything separate from what our tech review committee does.
And that's exactly my point. I would prefer to take it off because the both individuals that we would be appointing are the planning director and the DPW director. They're full-time employees. It's part of their responsibilities. And if there's not a specific charge, I personally would like to eliminate that committee if we can't identify what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to clarify, and it's time, is on my list who actually needs to be reappointed annually, because I don't believe that employees that are serving, the DPW director serving as a tree warden, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure that person needs to be reappointed annually. I know there's our plumbing and wiring inspector and gas inspector. I don't think, there isn't any reason they would need to be appointed annually. So I would like to do some more work on that. This appointment process, I think, came up faster. June 30 came up faster this year than it has in past years. So
In past years.
before, and I'd like to be able to give you a report on that before we talk about giving them forms to fill out, because I think it's premature to do that. With regard to the animal control officer, one thing that I would like to do this year is to put that under the police department. It's more typical that that function is under the police department. First and foremost, when that person isn't available, it's the police department that is responding. So it makes the most sense for the police chief to be the supervisor of that person for scheduling, to make sure that that person is using the same sort of reporting system. There are a lot of, it's a very similar function with the animal control officer. Going out to meet with somebody because there's a complaint is not a whole lot different than a police officer going out to meet with somebody over a complaint. So it makes sense for it to be there. Anything further than that, I think it's a personnel discussion. It's not properly noted on the agenda. And I'd have to look into that before I could make any other comments about, meeting with this person to talk about concerns.
Well, and I have one other follow-up question. Field driver. What is a field driver?
I don't.
So I would like to, if Mr. Ebersol is willing, I would like to amend his motion to include non-ratification of the Technical Advisory Committee and the field driver.
Well, I only hesitate that if we're going to eliminate, okay, not appointing somebody to a position is one thing. If we're going to eliminate positions, I think doing it at the time of the appointment process, we should review what they do. I mean, it's probably not the greatest idea to just review them the night because we don't know what they do. I mean, I'm not against getting rid of them, but I'd like some research to do. They got there for a reason.
But by not ratifying them,
yeah,
that gives us an opportunity, because my understanding is that appointment remains until they're not, well, no, it wouldn't, because we're not ratifying them. So we're actually not.
When does ratification have to come in place,
Within
Carrie?
14 days.
It's 15.
On the 15th day, it becomes.
So if we put this over to the week of the 15th, so when you're back, Tom, then
We're within that
I would
timeline.
propose that this entire list, with the assumption that these people would hold over similar to the other appointments, that this entire discussion could move over 2 weeks, and we'd have additional time to.
I think that makes the
Research.
most sense.
That is the week that I'm on vacation,
Well, then we wouldn't want to do it then. so.
FYI.
Well, you can discuss it while I'm away. I mean, it's not. I don't have any problem with these. If as far as the animal control officer, the position, not the person, I would just ask the one question: is what are the ramifications if nobody comes forward and we don't have an animal control
Right,
officer?
right.
What does that
Right.
mean? Does it mean?
Well, the problem is that we haven't advertised the position as being available. So any of these positions, in my issue with this appointment process is that we have the agenda item that says annual appointments and/or reappointments, and we're privy to this list on yesterday, but publicly, people don't have knowledge of what these positions are. It's under the jurisdiction of the town manager with us to ratify, but you can't say there's nobody there, similar to other things, unless we know other people are there, and I don't know if there's somebody, I've certainly not gone recruiting for animal
No,
control.
neither have I. I'm just asking I'm asking a
Legally.
generalized question of what are the ramifications of not, if somebody doesn't come forward, what other ramifications of not having an animal control officer do
Yeah.
we?
Does it just fall to the police department?
Right.
Do they have to take care of it, or?
Well, I would say that at least in certain circumstances, it would. I mean, the police department is not 100% equipped to deal with all of the calls that the animal control officer receives. I mean, the complaints, and
Right.
that's one thing, but there are other functions that the animal control officer provides, disposing of dead wildlife on the side of the road. I mean, that's something, the police department is not equipped.
But Kathy doesn't do wildlife, she only does
Small
domestic.
wildlife. Small.
Well, if there's a dead raccoon on the side of the road, who clears that out?
DPW, I believe.
Right. I don't know that it is animal control.
If it's an injured raccoon, it would not be the dog officer, animal control officer.
Okay.
It would not be.
At least that's what's been told to people, so.
And I've been told the same.
Okay, so what is the wish of the board with the current slate of appointments by the town manager? We have a motion. Are you rescinding that motion, or do you? Because I heard some variations there.
Well, we had the amendment, but we didn't have further discussion on the amendment
Right.
on that.
Well, that's why I'm just opening it up again, so.
You know, my feeling on the technical advisory committee, I'm very familiar with the tech meetings. I don't understand why we are appointing 2 of our employees as a technical advisory committee when they do that as part of their duties anyway, and we can't even define what the committee does. I want to get out of the habit of just ratifying to ratify. I want to understand what it is that we're
Is that a-
ratifying and what it is that they do.
Is it a planning board committee that has 2 slots to be appointed? Well, but they would do their own
They would
planning
do their own
director.
appointments.
Yeah,
Well-
I'm not aware that this committee is meeting.
I don't know that they've ever met. I mean, I know that there are tech meetings on a routine basis, and I know that the DPW director and the planning director are very active participants, and typically the planning director organizes those tech review meetings.
And if
So
there's
I
a-
don't know why we're ratifying an appointment to a committee that it really isn't a committee.
And if it doesn't have minutes or agendas, then it's
Right.
technically not supposed to meet. So,
So,
or it's supposed to, if it meets, it's supposed to have those. I guess I would rescind my motion, make a motion that we defer action on the town manager's appointment list until next Tuesday.
and I would second that. No, you seconded, so you have to second the,
I made the motion, you can second.
well, no, but there was
withdrew.
already,
I
there
withdrew.
was already a
I withdrew.
motion.
I
Oh, you
withdrew my
withdrew your
original
second?
motion.
Yeah, you have to
Yes.
withdraw your
Okay,
second.
so there you go. Now he made a new
Now
motion.
I second.
Okay.
During that meeting, will we discuss, like, any of the other appointments?
Well, by the way, excuse me for interrupting. Just again, a point of procedure. If we're not going to do anything, we don't have to actually take a motion not to ratify. We just don't have to do anything. We have 15 days, so you don't have to do anything
Right.
right now. You can just not do anything and then take it up next week.
Okay.
So can we put that on the agenda for next week?
Yes, and so you're specifically looking for a definition of what the field driver is responsible for in the technical advisory committee. Were there any other?
Inspector of animals may actually be a Board of Health appointment.
The inspector of animals is Board of Health. That's the person who goes out and does barn inspections.
Okay. So that would not be on our list, on your list.
So does that go away?
Yeah, so is that not a town manager appointment?
I think it changed when we became 10,000 population.
You know, I remember having discussion about this a few years ago. I'd have to go back and look about who made that appointment.
I'm probably the only one who doesn't know it, but we've got 8 public weighers. What do they do?
These are people at Keating's that are responsible for
Oh.
weighing the materials that are sold there.
So they're all Keating's employees?
Yeah, and they do that on behalf of the town.
The inspector of weights and measures is a different,
Yeah, that's
that they do gas stations, et
Gas
cetera.
stations, scales at the grocery stores.
And they're not on this list.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah,
is,
they are.
yeah.
Yeah, they
You're
are.
calling
Now,
them.
is that a paid position? How
There
do-
is a stipend for
There
that
is,
position.
okay.
yeah. And that is somebody, we went through a process to hire that person who is essentially an employee of the town.
What does a fence viewer do?
Oh, you gotta ask Renee, what's his name? He wants that job.
We actually have somebody who asked for it.
Yeah, Renee,
So the fence viewer actually views fences. It settles disputes between property owners. It goes back to before GPS and other technical ways of finding out where the property lines is. Is your fence on my property? So they go out and view your fence.
yeah, and Renee Lafayette filled out a talent bank form, and that was his first choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Okay,
big.
so those are those two?
Yep.
Technical Advisory Committee and Field Driver. Okay, so then you can take that up
An
next.
inspector of animals, we're just going to clarify.
I will
Who's the
do that,
appointing
yeah.
authority?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's appointments. Oh,
Well, okay, so we're not going to take any action on the police department either?
But there's no action we need to take.
We don't-
Right
okay.
now, until we do otherwise, they are in that
They
position.
stay incumbent, okay.
They are permanently in that position if we do nothing
Yeah.
after 15 days.
15 days,
At the
okay.
15th day.
Okay,
So normally we'd have 15 days to act, right?
Right.
Anyways.
So we have not ratified, we have not done anything. All we've done is, the town manager has made the appointments.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, just staying on appointments, perhaps it makes sense to go to the bottom of the agenda where we have another appointment
Sure.
and a resignation on the agenda.
So we have an appointment, Ken Chenis, who's the new planning board member, is going to be a representative to the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee.
And is he's not our representative, it's our appointment to that, in addition to the planning board having an appointment?
There's some ambiguity about that. It's typically a member of the planning board, but apparently we can have an alternate, and that alternate would typically be a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
But I attempted to get clarification to that at the last MPO meeting, and Brad Harris was on vacation, so I'm still awaiting clarification of that.
I would move that we appoint Ken Chenis, representative to the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. And we have a resignation from Sheila Loomy of the Lunenburg Housing Authority. She is one of the few remaining members on there, isn't she? On the Lunenburg Housing Authority.
No,
I
that,
believe there are 5 members of that board.
Well, anyway, she's served on that for many, many years, so again, we should draft a letter. And these letters, that when we mention these, should be brought to the board so we can sign them and send them. Like I said, Sheila served many years on the authority, and she still remains, I believe, an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Just to clarify, on the spreadsheet with the talent bank forms, when it says housing, and we have 2 applicants under housing, is that the housing authority?
That is the Housing Partnership, which is another committee that I'm not aware has met in a very long time. This is the Housing Authority. This is an elected position to the Housing Authority.
Okay, so the housing, no, okay, so that's an elected position.
that's another joint meeting between them and us that
Okay.
Carrie included the notice in the packet.
Just a thought that perhaps, oh, okay, I didn't see that, okay. That if we have people that have expressed an interest in housing, perhaps they might be interested in that.
I was
vacancy.
going to suggest that because I'm not sure how many people will get interested in
Housing Authority.
the Housing Authority.
Okay, back to current business, number 3, town manager goals. So we'll open up the discussion. I mean, in the back of the packet was the current years, or the previous years, now that we are in the new fiscal year. Town manager goals. and then we should establish what we want this year's to be.
Do we have a composite of what individuals recommended? Because I didn't bring mine. I don't, I know everyone as part of the evaluation was to present their own individual goals, and honestly, I don't remember what mine were. I'd have to go back and look at it, and I don't know if everyone
Well, we
else-
can table this till next week.
No, you're not going to be here next week.
Right. But I'll tell you what my two are.
Okay.
My two goals are very clear, because I think the fact that we only had four, and the town manager was able to make progress, substantial progress on a lot of these, was excellent. The two that are the most important to me was define and get settled with the land use director and begin the whole process of the economic development plan. Those are the two most important goals for me. So if you would take up that charge
Yeah,
when
I
we discuss this next week?
I had both of those under mine as well, but I did have additional, and I'd like to, I don't know if everyone else would like to table it or if you want to go forward, but I'd like to
I'd-
I'd like to relook at what,
Yeah, I'd like to wait till next week if that's okay.
Okay.
And the other part is, do we ever ask Carrie what goals she'd like to have?
Yep. So you should come prepared what goals you think you should have.
Okay.
Would you like to do the same for the Board of Selectmen goals? Or would you want to talk about those now?
Do you have any suggestions?
Do I have a suggestion? Not as if people are prepared to talk about
Like you
them
did
or
for the
not.
last one.
I just had my two that I wanted. I
right.
mean, I don't.
I think that most of our goals, finish the policies manual, we're almost done with that.
Yep.
List of town-owned land and chapter properties, I believe that was done with the Open Space Committee. The only thing that may need to be done is how it relates to other committees. Economic Development Plan, you just talked about it, it's a joint, what we need to do. Communication between committees and departments, I would recommend we continue that, because we need to keep working with that. Town website, I believe that we were starting to turn that over to the IT director, but possibly maybe need to appoint an IT committee if that's recommended, but I can't remember where we came.
Well, that's something I've proposed many years. It never has gained traction, but I think we should have a website committee who's responsible for just periodically basically combing through the website to see, because there are many places where Board of Selectmen members, for instance, are located in two places, and they're not shared information, and so they get updated in one spot and not the other.
Right.
So people catch that, and then they can come up with uniform design about how the pages should look, and come up with uniform distribution and submission formats that should be in PDF format, that should be this. I mean, just some general guidelines that I think people over time have already accepted, but it'd be nice to have a packet.
I agree completely. I think we need a website policy committee. I also think that some of these other goals are up to us, establish basic policies for what documents must be on the website. I think that is a basic policy, but I think we do have to revisit that. But I think that establishing a website policy committee absolutely makes sense.
Which is C. So this
Right.
should stay again.
And the only other goal I think we need to have is, we talked about it last year, and that's the revision of the town manager evaluation form.
And that needs to be done sooner than later, so.
Right,
that
we should
it
do
can
it,
be
right. We should do it
part of
sooner than
the-
later with the
the-
town manager goals. And, to some degree, I don't like to call people out, but I mean, I know Mr. Toll's background is in personnel. So he
Second.
probably has.
I'll
what?
second that.
I'd be happy to do that. In fact, I've had a few discussions with the town manager about trying to expand the role of the personnel committee to do more than just kind of rubber stamp
Right.
the way it has been done in the past. And maybe they could be a
That'd be
task
great.
group to help with that.
That'd be great.
There are additional things that I think as a community we need to look at, and I don't know whether there are goals, and I think that I put these in my evaluation, and unfortunately I don't have it here, but I think we do need to facilitate, obviously, the repurposing of the town-owned buildings. I think we have to look at the primary school and exploring opportunities for that. So that kind of ties with economic development. But I think we've got to facilitate the recommendations of the Building Reuse Committee. I think we also, as a community, and this in conjunction with the Planning Board, is really look at stormwater and the possibility of adopting a stormwater utility, or talking about how we are going to manage that, because it is an extremely expensive item on the town's books. It's going to continue to be that, and it's going to rise as developments happen, and I think we've got to get in front of that. So I think it's something, because it could be a potentially enormous budgetary issue. I think we need to work with both the Finance Committee and the Planning Board and explore that option. So I think that's something, whether it's our goal or whether it's an in conjunction with, I think it has to be on our radar. And I may have more, I just don't remember.
Well, you can
Yeah,
discuss it. If I have any additional ones, I'll let you know
okay.
for next week. Minutes. Are we looking at anybody to, as I'm signing these minutes, to take minutes for us?
The superintendent is advertising for somebody to take minutes at the school committee meeting, and I'm hoping that we're going to use the same person we had talked about, just doing one advertisement. She was ready to go before I was, so she is running the ad, and hopefully we're going to get one person to do both committees.
Okay, warrants.
This is payroll.
Payroll in the amount of $553,331.17. More payroll in the amount of $355,183.83. Accounts payable in the amount of $1,491,042.04. And that is because of the retirements, Worcester Regional Retirement.
That's the first of fiscal 15. We pay a number of assessments 100% on July 1st.
Excellent.
And we have several fiscal 14 accounts payable.
This is accounts payable for last fiscal year, $231,871.84.
Accounts payable for 14.
Accounts payable for FY14 as well, $316,351.04. There's a lot of things that are coming out and 4 cents.
I got another one here.
All
You
right.
should play your number.
I'm telling you, I'm going next door after this. Another fiscal 14 accounts payable, $115,316.82. And last but not least, fiscal 15, $254,917.04.
It wasn't easy making
Action file issues.
I would like to bring something up.
Excellent.
I attended the Mass Stormwater Forum that was held on June 24th. There were several speakers addressing different components of stormwater issues. The EPA New England section chief stated that stormwater is a large and growing source of water pollution. It's just huge. She urged communities to establish performance standards for newly developed and redeveloped sites. She said that public education, outreach, involvement, and participation are needed. She discussed the overall stormwater permits program and said there's an update to the 2008 permit that's scheduled for release this October. hopefully that will happen. Another speaker did a lot of discussing of the large Chesapeake Bay stormwater program. This is the largest estuary in the United States. It includes 6 states and Washington, D.C., and so they have to all work together. They kind of decided what each state's total maximum daily load could be, TMDL, and that's how they regulated it for each of the 7 partners. And it's very complex, but it seems to be working. There was a speaker that addressed the funding issue, how communities will deal with unfunded mandates in the stormwater arena. Nationally, there's a movement to create stormwater utilities. Back in 1986, there were 2, and now there's more than 1,000 nationally, and there are 7 in Massachusetts. And AIR is forming one now. They are a way to provide a source of funding for unfunded mandates that are coming down the pike, as well as to promote best management practices. So you can, if people have less impervious soil, that you get credit for that. And if you have undisturbed land on your property as opposed to being lawn, there's just ways that you can encourage behaviors through it. Or you can just simply charge everybody the same. But there are ways you can do it so that it's a smarter way to do it and to get more bang for your buck. The last speaker brought it all home when he reminded us that city and town governments are the stewards of our community's natural resources. Stormwater issues are linked to population density, and as we expand development, we've got to find ways to fund and manage stormwater issues. And I did get a copy of all of the PowerPoint slides that they presented, if anyone's interested in those.
I would like a copy of those. This is something that I've talked about a lot. You guys have all heard it before. And as I said, I think it has to be a goal as a community. I think we need to talk with our planning board as well as our DPW director, who currently manages the stormwater program. We do have a stormwater bylaw. When we complied with the first part of the 2008 permit, it was very costly, and we were funding $25,000 a year in our budget for that, never mind the initial cost of doing the report, which was very extensive. The revised permit that Ms. Slick was just talking about had much more stringent requirements in it, and that's why it has taken so long, and I haven't seen the new draft. But if it is anything like what was originally proposed, there will be financial repercussions from those new requirements. So we need to get in front of this and look at every opportunity that we have to assist with the financial burden. But I couldn't agree more that it's something that we as a community, especially a community with 3 lakes and numerous wetlands, we need to deal with this as a community and get in front of this issue.
Excellent. Thank you for your report. And now we get on to committee reports. Board of Health.
No report.
Building Reuse.
The Building Reuse Committee met jointly with the Planning Board on June 18th. It was a good kickoff meeting to an effort that's going to require cooperation at a minimum between Building Reuse, the Planning Board, and the Historical Commission, with opportunities for various other groups in town to get involved. One of the things that was kind of driven home is during the public comment section, there was a citizen who had many questions about our process and some of the issues around building reuse, and all of those items, I'm glad to say, are on our agenda, and we have been working, but it kind of brought home the fact that we need to be more outgoing and communicative with what it is we're working on. So in that spirit, the Building Reuse Committee, the Planning Board, and the Historical Commission are all working on various outreach programs to communicate what they're working on and to get input from the community. Last evening, at Town Hall here, there was a a public input meeting run by the Historical Commission, which kind of looked backward at the history of the center of town, gave people an opportunity to see what town center was over the years, and opened the conversation. I wish there was more input, but they opened the conversation for people to begin giving input as to what they'd like town center to be. At the end of this month, July 30th, the planning board is going to sponsor what they call a charrette. It's another opportunity to get public input in terms of their to provide information and input for their zoning bylaw discussion, their village zoning bylaw discussion, which is a key part of building reuse as well. And the Building Reuse Committee plans to participate quite heavily in that cooperative effort as well. Building Reuse's next open meeting is on July 7th, and as I said, the planning board charrette is on July 30th.
And I was at that presentation last night by the Historical Commission as well, and I want to give a shout out to Damon McQuaid, who did a fine presentation. Really touched on all the streets leading in and out of town center and their history, and it was really a good presentation. And I think it's a good starting point, because I think, if you want to have a vision going forward, you should know where you're coming from too. So,
well, one of the points, Mr. Chairman, was that apparently in those days when they had building reuse issues, they put them on wheels and moved them around.
a lot of building.
And I'm beginning to think about that as a possibility.
It is quite fascinating how many buildings in town, the older buildings, were moved from one place to another and all over. And now people don't even, they won't even move their shed. They just kind of trash it and build a new one. So it's pretty amazing.
I mean, then they moved some things to Fitchburg.
Yeah, I know.
Not just down the
Distances
street.
in big buildings. Capital planning
On hiatus.
FinCom.
I was unable to attend their last meeting. I do know that they're completing their work on their rules and regulations, and will be presenting to them the final version to us shortly. Their next meeting is July 10th.
Library Board of Trustees.
Library Board met in June. As I mentioned before, they had their book and bake sale, of which they raised $3,600, which goes towards additional programming beyond their budget. The Friends of the Library are going to meet on July 26th. The new members have, it's a very good board anyways, but the new members have added some additional charges to their action, including where do they want to look like as a library in 5 years. Electronic books and everything else, community center work, that type of thing. So they're trying to stay ahead of the curve for what they're doing as a library.
Excellent. MPO.
As was stated earlier, the MPO voted to endorse the TIP with the 2017 funding for Summer Street, and the TIP. There were some minor modifications from the initial notice, some corrections, et cetera, but it was adopted. But one thing that did come up that was interesting that I think we might want to look into as a community is participation, and we may do this already, is participation in the Safe Routes to School program. And if we sign on to that initiative as a community, it opens up funding opportunities for sidewalks and for bicycle lanes, et cetera. And I don't know whether or not we as a community, as the school district, already participate in that. But if we don't, it's through a section of Mass DOT, and it would be worth exploring.
The primary school must, because in the paperwork, they had an application to submit a grant. They unfortunately didn't, because they can assess the Safe Routes to School for you. Unfortunately, they didn't apply for the grant, but I think you have to participate for at least a year to be eligible.
Right.
Apply.
Right. And I don't know, I know it's typically part of the application process. I just don't know if we are recognized as participating in the program or not. But there's a whole bunch of programs that are available. They'll come out and talk to the students about safe ways to walk home. They'll talk about ways to, safety for bicycles. It's a whole program. It's a public outreach program, but additionally it opens up funding opportunities, and whether or not you have to participate for a length of time, I don't know. But, it's worth exploring as to whether or not we participate in that program.
I can find out. I know they did not participate or did not submit a grant application in this latest round, but I can find out some more information.
Yeah, because the DOT runs it, right? And
Right, it's a division, it's called Mass Drivers, which is a subset apparently of Mass DOT, but Clinton Bench, who's the chair of the MPO, talked about it a little bit, and he talked about some of the things that they'll do, coming out and assessing bicycle helmets, for example, or running programs for the kids on, stranger danger, and how the safe ways to get to and from, and ways to walk on roads that don't have sidewalks. And it sounds like a fantastic program that if we're not participating in, we should be.
Planning board.
Unfortunately, I had only been able to attend the first meeting of the planning board this month, and they had several, as Mr. Toll just outlined. The meeting on 6/23, I know that Mr. Alonso was at for a portion of. I did talk with Ken Chenis from the planning board just to kind of get an overview of what's going on, so feel free to jump in if I miss something. Basically, the majority of the meeting focused on the school project, and many of the points have been addressed. This is the 100 points that the engineer had. There are still some issues that are remaining outstanding, and they're tabled pending some modifications of the plan and review by the reviewing engineer. There was a resident at the meeting that expressed some concerns about some of the design, but I'm not going to go through all of those. But there are still some issues outstanding that are being looked at. The Highfield Village, they're awaiting more information, and they're coming back. It's at a July meeting to be determined. The school project, back to the school project, we'll be looking for a couple of waivers, specifically height, and there was a lot of talk about parking, but it looks like it meets our zoning. And the width of the roadway was talked about quite a bit. And then soil testing within the infiltration area that's proposed. The engineer is recommending that, and they are going to be doing those tests. But I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, basically, it was, like you said, a review of the 100 issues that the reviewing engineer had, and then, again, we had a resident, the resident appeared there, so it was
Right.
Mr. Rogers
Right.
came forward with concerns about particular parts of the reviewing engineer's report. They went through point by point all 100, that the vast majority of them were addressed. I think there's about 16 or 17 outstanding. Some of them are simple ones, as to the height of the building is 2 feet beyond our code. And so would it require a waiver, or would it not require a waiver? That's the question, because really, as it was noted all along, that the planning board doesn't have approval authority. It's not going, this project doesn't go through the planning board, it goes through the school building committee and the school building authority, the Mass School Building Authority. So, but there's still discussions that we want to make sure that all the points are addressed. And we want to make sure that anything that was brought to our attention, that our engineers, ours meaning the school building committees, are looking at those issues and responding to them about why certain things were happening. One question was that the thickness, I'll just take one for instance, was the thickness of the asphalt. And the reason it turns out that they went down a ½ inch in the thickness of the asphalt is because they put that extra money that ½ inch would cost, and put it into further engineering of the subbase that would save the engineering anyway. So to make sure the drainage in the subbase is more solid, and that's where they spent more engineering money, and that's why they came up with that compromise. So these are the things that the two engineers, the reviewing engineer and the architect, are addressing. It was a very good conversation with everybody involved. It was mainly between the reviewing engineer and the engineers of the project, but there was some external conversation with Mr. Rogers and other people speaking, although not at length.
I just want to comment on some of the comment. Well, I understand that the planning board doesn't have oversight authority. I, as a citizen, I do have to sort of concur with Mr. Rogers' concern about, specifically about the drainage, because it is, that was one of the largest issues that the reviewing engineer has identified, and there are still some outstanding issues on that. There is a history of significant drainage and drainage problems with abutting properties from this site. So I think as a community, while the Mass School Building Authority has oversighting authority, we're going to have to live with it if there's a problem. So I think it's going to be imperative that we make sure, for example, that those testing are done within those infiltration areas, and we know that the culverts are sized correctly, et cetera. Because if abutting properties are flooded as a result of this, we're going to have to deal with those.
Oh, clearly. I mean,
So-
there's no, there was no discrepancy in that.
Yeah,
That
yeah, just
two things are true, that all the points, nobody was dismissing the points of the reviewing engineer. They were very welcome points. We want people looking at it. That's why this board initially said that we would like them to do a reviewing engineer, even though the project didn't require it. We wanted that.
Right.
So we want other people to look at it, because you're right. I mean, it is going to be a project that we as a town have to live with. The other thing that's true that Mr. Rogers said, and I couldn't agree more, is that we don't want two sets of standards, that when the town builds a building, we can make waivers where we want, and then other people, when they want to build them, can't. We don't want that. I certainly don't want that. As a member of the school building committee, one member, I certainly will voice that opinion, and I think that opinion is shared by everybody on it. We all want this to be the best building it can, and we want it to be within all the codes that we have established through years of doing these kind of projects, not only schools, but subdivisions, et cetera. So all these were taken very seriously and are continuing to be addressed.
School building committee, that's next, so I'll ask you then.
Oh, okay. So the school building committee, obviously the planning board part of it, we did have two things. So last Wednesday, there was an abutters meeting that we talked about the initial site work that will be done, all the fencing that's going to be put up, and talk with the abutters. I guess there was probably approximately 20 people there. I know Mr. Ebersol was there too. So it was a good conversation again, where people got to see what is being proposed. I think I sent this around last week, which is what the site work is going to, what they're proposing with fencing and everything, and if people want to look. People were able to ask questions. There was a little bit talk about parking. There was talk about pickups and drop-offs turned out to be a topic that was discussed, I guess, kind of at length. If there was one topic that was discussed at length, it was that where would the bus traffic go? What would the pickup, would people be dropping off, and would buses be going to Oak Ave? Would they be coming in on Mass Ave and leaving on Oak Ave? Would there be a split? Would they be turning around and exiting Mass Ave? And so all of that are discussions in progress. And parent pickup, right now they line up for the middle school, they line up on Oak Ave. And we talked about that, now that we have a long connecting road, with the ability to park on the side of that road, there should be nobody waiting for anybody on a public road. And this is not a public road, this is a facility road. So that was discussed because people were interested in that. They were interested in how the construction was going to go about, and our OPM, along with the construction management team, were there to answer questions about hours of operation, dust control, stockpiling of materials, et cetera. Well, the common questions that you would ask, and I think people got a good response from those questions, and most importantly, that the topic was open, that these would happen continually through the project now. So every few months, we would have an abutters meeting to discuss things that are going on, and if anybody has any new concerns at that point. Then on Thursday, we had a meeting of the school building committee directly, where we approved the 60% construction design papers and numbers. So all the numbers are coming in right where we want, between the projections between the OPM and Shawmut and the project appropriation that was approved at the ballot and town meeting. So all of that is on track. I think the groundbreaking is supposed to happen sometime in September, early September. And the next meeting, I think, is in a couple weeks. I don't have the exact date on me right now.
Is there any discussion on the road, exactly the boundary line of the road?
Yeah, there was, I can submit this just for your review. It's really not an official document, but the engineers reviewed the seeding and the siting of Passios and where the road is, and it meets all the 40-foot setbacks that is required, so there would not be any variances or anything necessary. And I'm like, listen, with the amount of property we have, we cannot have a variance for the road. I mean, it has to be a separable project. And then we have to discuss, the only thing that wasn't discussed finally, although two possibilities were at least floated, was road access. So either the beginning part of the proposed driveway off Mass Ave would be a public road to a certain point to allow entrance to Passios currently, or we'd have to talk about the opening up of Memorial to continue where that gated area is to provide an entrance and parking at that area. Because at that point, if that school is accessed, then so would the Kids Kingdom, so there would be some room to maneuver to potentially put a different parking area, or at least connect the existing one from a different entrance.
I understand that point. Let me just confirm though, so that the line they're working with would not create a non-conforming
That's
situation
correct.
at Passios?
That is correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just to follow up on the,
But I don't want to give the impression that it's finalized.
Right.
When I bring it up at the next meeting, because the three issues that are very important are the ones that this board brought up. Stormwater is one, and we've talked about that. The setback, the property lines were the other one, and then parking was another one. But I think the parking one is kind of pretty much finalized, because the numbers fit within the zoning, and also it does not take into consideration two pieces, does not take into consideration all the parking that will be available along that connecting road. Because again, that road will be effectively a 3-lane road where there will be parking available on one side, still allowing two-way traffic.
I did attend the Butters meeting. I thought there was going to be a soft construction in July, meaning they're going to start putting the fencing up or something, because they...
Right, I said groundbreaking. Yeah, they're going to be starting the fencing as soon as they can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they promised was that before they did anything and start doing the work, was that they were going to give out information on how to contact the on-site manager,
Right.
what the phone number was going to be. They took all of our email addresses for those of us who actually had computers, and as a way to communicate to the various people. So they were very open to that, and then there was the discussion of, well, if you don't like what they're doing, then the process is going to the school building committee, and then the question becomes after that, I'm assuming it goes to the school committee because they're technically in charge of the property. It wouldn't come back to us.
We would want to invite, it depends on what I
Right,
guess it
right.
depends on what issue is raised.
Yeah, and part of the whole thing is being concerned about what might happen as opposed to thinking that something will happen. And it was just making sure that all the residents, especially the ones that were, I'm further down the street, so I'm not directly affected other than the trucks going by. But the ones that are directly next to the property may have some additional concerns that the property manager may think that's being taken care of, but really isn't. So we want to make sure that there is that process on that. And the other thing is that I like to because people are concerned about this being a cut-through between Oak Ave and Mass Ave, and I've been calling it a driveway, whatever size, for whatever portion, to serve the school, because there are going to be speed platforms, not bumps. They're going to be to various keep it from being a raceway.
Right.
So that was the other concern that was raised a lot.
Right.
And the only other question was, from the planning board's review of the 100 points, is there going to be any written report that actually documents what they found and what things are still the issues, or as opposed to that they've resolved the other ones?
The school building committee has requested that all of the documentation back and forth, the initial reviewing engineers, peer review report, and then all subsequent communication between the two engineers, that we have it available. We don't even have it available yet, and we have requested it. Once it's done, probably in some final format, that will come from the planning board who awarded the peer review, who requested it, that their final report will be posted, and that probably will be the final, an official document. Maybe the school building committee will comment on that directly. And to that point, if we can request, because right now, the access to the middle school, high school building project, the website is through the school website. If we can get a direct link to our homepage at some point when they start putting up the first fencing, so that on our homepage it says if you want to look at the high school, middle school website directly, we can. I'm fine with it going through the school, but I'm trying to make it as direct as possible for every resident, so they don't have to go from the homepage to the schools to the website. If we can just go right to the website, that'd be great. If you can pass those documents back down to my file.
And I bypass school committee action file.
Okay, yep. So now school committee.
The school committee met on 6/18. I was unable to attend. The focus of the meeting was the presentation from the advisory committee for acceptance, so exactly the presentation that Bob treated us to tonight. And after that, they approved school handbooks for the fiscal year 15, and that was about the focus of the meeting.
Okay. PAC, we don't have anything. School advisory, we heard earlier in the meeting. Mass broadband, nothing. Sewer commission.
The Sewer Commission is working on two policies, capacity fee policy and privately funded extension policy update. They're also in the process of interacting with the Zoning Board of Appeals and the developer for the now called the Whalum Luxury Apartment Project, because at the time that development was originally approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, the then Sewer Commission approved waiving of privilege fee for the affordable units in consideration of the developer installing sewer down Pleasant View. Now that it's no longer single-family homes touching that property, the developer's not doing that, but the developer is still asking for a waiver of a lot of the fees. So the Sewer Commission is involved in that discussion. Ultimately, the Zoning Board of Appeals makes the decision on any local regulations or prices, regardless of whether we have to pay other communities, unfortunately. So that's continuing for the discussion at that point. They came out officially against granting a reduction of fees.
I'm still, at some point, I don't want to belabor this, but we'll come back to this. But I just want for the record to say, I'm still not clear, and it has not been determined whether the Zoning Board of Appeals has the ability to override the Sewer Commission. That's not a zoning policy. That is a fee policy. And I think that an existing litigation that I won't discuss further, but that point is being discussed in an existing litigation. So,
the reason they get to be involved in it is that the project has to be made economically feasible. And any additional costs that make it economically feasible, according to a formula that the State Housing Appeals Committee adopts or is approved, they have the right to go and say, you're charging us too much, this is going to cost too much, we can't afford to do it. The sewer rules and regulations are adopted locally as a way to charge a fee that we have to pay to another community.
Right, and that's where the contention is.
That's where the contention is. That's where the contention is.
Sure, you can tell, maybe you can bully us and with state law to tell us, yeah, you can't collect that because you're just collecting it for yourselves. But if it's a pass-through, I don't know that they have the ability to say, no, you can't collect it, but by the way, your MIA says you have to pay it.
You're now charging us. They are now charging us to host this development.
So that would be the difference between the privilege fee and the connection fee. So they might be able to waive one versus the other.
Right, and privilege fee, again, that's another point that's being discussed in another case of similar merit. So we'll have to look forward to that.
But the Sewer Commission is on the right side.
Right.
So
that's what I like about it. I think the Zoning Board of Appeals has been on the right side. I applaud them in their cases and the way they've handled it.
Well,
so
they really have. I have to hand it to. I know this is not on the agenda. Hand it to the Zoning Board of Appeals for their due diligence.
Yeah, I agree.
Each member on that committee brings something different to that discussion.
I agree. Okay. Any that is the agenda. Any final public comment from the board?
I just have one thing. I have, you approved a transfer of license for Hadwin Market.
Oh, yes.
And it's come back from the ABCC, so this is just a request for a signature on the
And
license.
did you have, I didn't ask you if you have any reports or department?
No, I don't have any other reports.
All right. So any public comment from the board in closing? Any public comment from the public? All right, then I would entertain a motion just to let everybody know. Our next meeting will be next Tuesday night, July 8th. I hope everybody has a very safe and enjoyable 4th of July. Weather looks questionable, but it's a day off, so people should still enjoy it. And I think the weekend is supposed to be good, so.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good night, everyone.